and welcome. You got a East Coast and a West Coast representative. I'm on the West Coast here in Portland, Oregon. Welcome, and let's get her started here. All right, so here's me in all my glory. I've been in the Autodesk world, as you can see, for 30 plus years now, doing a bunch of different stuff. My current position is the Design and Visualization Team Manager for the consulting division here at Imagine It, as Gladys said. So our agenda today is going to get into the importance of addressing model health. We're going to talk about why we want to use Bim Link for model health. Then we're going to get into a quick tour of kind of what Bim Link is, and I'll create some stuff in there. And then we're going to get into really the bulk of the presentation, which is using Bim Link for model checking. And we're going to focus on 3 areas: project standards, quality control, and health check. And then at the end, we'll have some Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll get started here. I'm going to turn my camera off so I can save some bandwidth, and then I'll turn it back on when we go to Q&A. So, importance of addressing model health. I keep hitting my enter key, and it's doing something different. There we go. All right. So why is it important? Well, there's many reasons for your models to be slow, and one of those big reasons is a trend to really be the health of the model. And if we're looking at crashing, models are crashing, typically that's going to be an issue with your health of the model, and it's never fun when models crash. And when we look at printing and exporting, those are time-consuming tasks, and it's such a headache when you're having issues and having to deal with those issues. And then of course, preventing model upgrades. This is something that back in my support days was pretty common when we're trying to upgrade from one version of Revit to another version of the model. Typically what we're seeing is, in those instances, are basically warnings that aren't coming across, and it's not letting us upgrade. And then of course there's our project company standards and our project standards that we want to keep in alignment with. And really the goal is to keep project teams and stakeholders happy, and it's never really fun when files aren't working and we're having issues like that. Now, this is just a page, a snapshot of some of the behaviors that lead to model health issues. And by no means it's a full list of those, but let's start off with loaded families. And we look at this and go, think about it. If you're not venting your families properly, you're going to come up with a bunch of different things that are happening, like additional line styles and subcategories that you really don't want in your model. When we're looking at groups in general, we got to look at the excess of model groups and make sure we're doing best practices with model groups. And why are we using the array feature, and should we be using that and having too many of those arrays? And if you look at like loading in a group in the sense or binding a Revit file, you're going to get some other stuff that's going to pop in there. So that's going to go back up to the family side, and you want to vent those out before we bring those in. And then looking at our CAD files, there's a lot of crazy things in my time here that can bring in a bunch of wacky stuff that happens, and especially when it comes to graphics. And then if somebody imports a CAD file, and hopefully they don't expose that CAD file, because then you're going to get all the CAD information overhead that you're going to have to try to clean up and so forth. And believe it or not, transfer project standards will bring over extra stuff that you may not know about. Kind of like dependent information. And if you look at that, like inserting of a view, you're going to get that view excuse me, that view title. If it's not a standard view title, that's going to come across, and then you got to figure out where it is and how to get rid of it. And then of course warnings, especially warnings. Think about warnings, and you got calculations and you got constraints going on, and these are things that we need to be checking daily, if not weekly, if not daily on a project. And then of course careless software programming. And there's a stint during my support time back in the day that a week went by that we didn't have a call that Revit was crashing or something's going on, and we narrowed it down to a couple different free softwares that people were having, and we basically had to have it unload those programs in order for us to the project to go up. And of course, the lack of a big executed plan. So if you have a good executable plan, it's going to address all of these type of issues to make sure that your model is clean, you're doing good deliverables, and it's just going to help you tremendously down the road when you're looking at model health, not only just a project in general. And as my good friend Sash says over at Ideate, remember, model health issues typically are progressive problems. So with that, let's talk about Bim Link. So why Bim Link? What is Bim Link? So first and foremost, Bim Link is about precise Revit data control and parameters. So what we want to do is, we want to control that information, export that information out for a bunch of different reasons, but we're going to export it out to Excel, and we're going to look at it as review, maybe change some information, and also maybe create some information as well. And then once we get done with that over in Excel, we're going to bring it back over into Revit with all that data information. So a lot of things can happen over there. So you might want to say, well, why do we want to deal with Excel? Well, a lot of people are familiar with Excel. It's a very powerful tool, and unlike Revit schedules, we can copy and we can paste. There's extra types of formulas that we can do that we can't do within our schedules in Revit. We can create pivot tables. There's language conversions, and just think about extend your extended team, where you might have somebody that's really familiar with Excel, but not very familiar with Revit, but they still need to contribute into what's going on in the project. Well, we can simply send out information over to Excel, have them modify the stuff that they know, and bring it back in. So we're going to be dealing with these things called links, and Revit, Bim Link ships with 300 to 400 link definitions, and think of those as properties or parameters that we're going to send over to Excel and do something with. Again, remember, we're going to make changes to it, review it, etc. Now, the other nice thing about this is that it's compatible with our BIM 360 via our desktop connector. And I want you to think about it, this is not just one and done. In other words, we're just not going to send it over and bring it back and we're stuck in the project. We can actually export this information out to other projects as well as our templates. So once we have something we really like, we're going to use often, we can really just narrow this down and just click from our lists. All right, so I want to quickly get into it, kind of show you some stuff before we get into our model checking. So when you install Bim Link, you're going to get an Ideate software tab, and you're going to get it right over here, and you can see all the different Ideate softwares that I have installed at the present time. I'm going to go and click on my Bim Link. It'll pop up. Now what you're going to see here is I got rid of any links that I currently have, and as I go along in my presentation today, you're going to see that this area populates and it's saved within this project, and of course I can export that out to other places, as I said. So I'm going to start off with, I want to create a new one. And then as I look at this, I'm allowed to browse. I'm allowed to look at it by category. Notice this column here is changing, or by schedule. And I'm going to pop back over here to browse, and I have a nice little search engine that I can, if I pick up on the top here and I say I'm looking for, let's say, rename something, and if it doesn't show anything, it could be that I'm not looking at my subfolders. So you can see that there's all my little subfolders that I can do. I guess get out of that, and let's do that rename again. There we go. And what I want to do in this case is I want to rename a type. So I'm going to go off and look at types or instances. In this case, I want to rename some types. This is going to be a multi-category one. Now over here we have some folders that we'll get into a little later on, but you can notice that there's by discipline, there's some for architecture, construction, MEP. We've got some Kobe stuff going down there, and then we're going to concentrate later on these little three down in here. So I'm going to go and say next. And that will pop me over into my category list. And remember what I said, this is a multi-category one. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's uncheck those. And let's type in door, that's what I'm looking for, and get rid of that. And there's my two door things that I can do. I'm going to grab the door one, And I'm going to look down here, and this is kind of giving me a little preview what I have. So if I look over here in properties, I'm looking at the ID, the category, the family name, the family type, and the mark. And I can come over here to, let's say, filter, and I can look at and change some filters if I wanted to. I can sort it in grouping if I wanted to. So these are some pre-defined ones from that list. I'm pretty happy with what I have, so I'm just going to pop over here to the done, and then I'm going to go ahead and export where you want to put it right there, and I'll just override the one that I have, and then I'll go ahead and say open the file. And there it is. So I just basically took all that door information that I had, exported it over to Excel. Now, if we look at this, and it may be hard to see on the screen, if you will, but what we have is ID and category. Those are grayed out, and then these are the actual families that we have. Cool. And then, of course, the marks. So these are all, anything that's in gray is not changeable, but anything that's in white is changeable. All right, so I'm going to go and close that one off. And I'm going to do another one here real quickly. And I just did a quick search, but I'm going to do it for, really it's for generic annotations. I'll go and say next. And I want to add some to this list. I'm going to come over here and let's say I want to add plan. I want to add, let's say maybe description. And I also want to add a leader. Okay, and if I pop over here to categories, there's me filters. I want to filter it based upon my family name that contains plan. And then if I pop over here to the the links tab, this list is only showing me just kind of the default information, but I do know that this is a drop down that I want to be able to change and get that information. So if I pop over here to links and I go and say, let's export the drop down values, now I'm going to get a whole bunch of stuff that's going to pop on over. So I'm pretty happy with all that. I'm going to go ahead and say, done, export it, and save. Again, I'll just write over the one I did earlier today. I'll go ahead and open it up, pops me right back in. And again, if we look at it now, this is kind of gray, and here's kind of gray, but then we've got our keynote plan, our numbering, and the extra information. So what I want to do is actually add some more. So what I'm going to do is grab, let's say here to here. I want to copy those, and I'm just going to go ahead and just paste those right down below there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just grab this right here and just keep that numbering system going for those. And so think about how much time this would be taking to do this manually in Revit. There we go. So there we go. Now I want to add some information to this, and good old Richard over at Ideate, it calls us over here the whiteboard, if you will. And what I want to do is I want to add a formula to this. So what I want to say is equals draft dash, and my little quotes here. I want to add E26. I really probably want to do this above there. I might this smaller, make sure I'm getting everything I want to get. Right there. And so what it did was it kind of repeated my 26 right there, and should be 28. Sorry about that. And then I'm just going to drag her down to do the rest of them. So again, it's a formula. So I'm just going to drag it down to get those. And I went a little too far, and that's okay. It's a little tiny on my screen here, but I'm going to grab those. And copy them. And then I'll just paste it right in here. Uh-oh. 26. Not working for me today. Well, I got those working for me. And so I'm going to pop on over here to that, and you'll see it again. And I got my formula all messed up. But let's say that I want to add the dot fill here. So I'm going to copy this dot fill, put it right there. And then I want that dot fill for the rest of these. Perfect. And then over here, these are all going to be new. There we go. And I want to use 35 as my example. So I'm going to save this. We'll see if I get any errors when I pop it back over here. Let's do an import. Brought it in. And if I click this little button right here, it'll show me messages or errors. And I don't have any errors, so I'm going to go ahead and just say import that. Close it off. Let's pop into a plan view. And let's throw in a little note here. So go to annotation, symbol, and let's grab one of my symbols here. Remember I had that as plans, and the bottom one, that's what I'll grab. There it is. And remember that I had an arrow that was a dot, so if I add a leader to it, and I look at it, there's my dot. So there's a quick tour, and now we'll move on to our our main topic, which is getting to model checking. So we're going to start off with project standards. So we're going to deal with our three, which is project standards, quality control, and health check. So when we're looking at project standards, I want you to think about what is quality assurance, and quality assurance really gets into preventing problems from occurring. And we're going to be dealing with this with types and style controls. But if we look at the Revit QA tools, we have templates. So when we're creating a good template, remember doing our best practices, inventing out our families. We have view templates that allow us to control visibility, and then object styles. And of course, if we're doing anything with groups, our best practices with our groups. So what I want to do is go into renaming of doors. Just lost my mouse. There we go. All right, so back over to Bim Link. And remember, I already had this one. So if I go ahead and I go to properties, I can pop back into it. We're doing with a multi-category one. Here's the door information that I was looking for. Okay, and I'm going to just go ahead and do an OK, and I'll go ahead and export that. I'll just rewrite that one. There we go. All right, so remember, we've got our gray for ID, we got our category that is gray, and then we got area information that we can actually go off and change. So what I want to do again is I want to create a formula here, and what I want to do is our company is AC, let's say, and I want to add that AC in front of all of my door names. And so what I will do is I'll create a formula here that's equal, we'll say AC dash so I want that to be in front of my name, and then we're going to start with, we're going to add it on line C2. There we go. Now, also, I'm thinking about this as, we like to have everything capitalized as well. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add that to this. So I'm going to go and say upper and just add my brackets here. And there you go. So here it is, AC dash, all capital letters. Now, remember what I did last time was I just grabbed it and I dragged it all the way down to here to do it all the way for us. Now, all I need to do is copy it, grab up on our C2, and I'm going to right click it and I'm going to do a paste. And there it is. Now, let's say that I want to also control my type name. I can really do the kind of the same thing with that. I'm going to go and start with my equals upper. Go and do my bracket. And I'm going to say D2 for the type. And we're going to add the dash AC at the end. So I remember I said uppercase, and I'm going ahead and just going to drag this down. There we go. We'll go ahead and copy that. And right there, right click. And what I'm right clicking is saying added values is what I'm doing, which is what I didn't do in the earlier one. There we go. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to save my work. And as I'm looking at this, I realize that, I don't want dashes here. We shouldn't be having dashes, and that could be a company standard or Kobe or whatnot. So I'm going to go over here to my find and replace, and we'll do a find and replace here. I want to find spaces, and I want to replace them with a dash. Replace them all. 144 was done for me. I'll say okay to that. And let's close that out. And then notice that we've got a couple of them that are triple dashes and single dashes. So I'll go and do that again. And let's say replace. I'll replace the 3 dashes with a single dash. And let's try it. That one. There we go. And then we'll just do it for the single one as well. So look at all that stuff that I just did. Now I've got some problems, and I'm just going to pretend I don't know what those problems are. I'm going to go and save it, and I'll pop back over here to my Revit, and I want to bring that in. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to import. I want to import this one right here. Go and say open, and then here's my problems. I changed the name of my family name, my type name, and my mark name, and Revit came back, Bim Link came back and said, no, not going to do it. So I need to go back and get rid of these dashes in order for Bim Link to bring that information over appropriately. So I'm going to close that, pop back over here to my Excel. And all I need to do is come back up here and get rid of these dashes. There we go. Save it. And I'm going to close it and close it. And let's go ahead and import it again. There it goes. So you can see that it brought in all the information. If I check my warnings, nope, no warnings. I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And as I scroll down here and look at my door families, you can see that all have the AC dash going on in there. And if I look at, let's say this one right here, there's my types with the dash AC at the end. Awesome. Now just think about how much time it would take you to make that change within your project. All right, over to quality control, QC. So thinking about QC, QC is really fixing problems that have already occurred. And typically these are going to be like instance type parameters, if you will. Not always, but sometimes. But if we look at the QC tools within Revit, we're looking at the schedules will help us out with that. Work set visibility will help us out with that. Doing some wonky filters and creativeness with filters, and even our project browser when it comes to our views and our sheet names and so forth. So what I'm going to do here in my QC section is I'm going to look at door fire ratings, and I'm going to look at renaming of our views to be appropriate. So back to Bim Link. Whoa. It's thinking. I think I have my fans going on my computer, so I think Windows decided to install some updates without me asking. So I think that's why it's taking a bit longer, and I apologize for that. All right, so if I'm going to pop back over here, I want to do another new one. And again, if we start looking at what's going on with these things, and if I come back over here to our project standard, and as I look at these different ones, you notice that we're bringing in types. And as I scroll down, not all of these are going to be types, but there's a couple of them. There's a style one for line styles. There's material for instance one. So you can see that there's, based upon what it is that we're trying to do standard-wise, we're going to get either type or instance parameters. Same thing over here at quality control, or QCs. As I scroll down the list here, you can see that most of those are going to be instance ones, but then we got a couple type ones that are happening here. And what I want to grab is the fire rating, which is at the top. And there it is right there. I don't need to type that in. So door check fire rating, and it's instance parameters. So go ahead and say, okay. And all I really want to do is just look. I want to see what's going on. So think about, what I talked about is, we could do some modifications. You see me create some new things, but all I really want to do here is just kind of review what's happening. So this is a great look into my project. And if I go ahead and hit this bottom button here to show the entire thing, this is now showing me everything that's happening with my doors and the associated host element. So as I scroll down my list here, I can start thinking about, all right, well, I got this 2-hour wall going on here, but my door's not 2 hours. Should it be 2 hour, or should my wall be 2 hour? So this is a great way of going through your model and checking on these really important issues that we need to have. So again, this is maybe just checking. Now there's a way for me to go look at this. I'm going to do that later on with a dimension. And so that's a quick look and snapshot of fire rating. But let's go do another one here. That's going to be, let's say, our views. So it's going to be QC views and view names. So you can see there's a lot of things going on for views. I want my view naming. And this time I'm going to pop over here to filter. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I want my family and type. And I want it to contain. And I want to contain floor plan. Okay, Now it's not really a big change that's happening here, but if you want to look at what I got going on in my filters, right now what I have is a or statement. So I'm either doing this or that, and I want to go this and that. And what I need to do for that is check this right here where it says element must pass all filters. Now I'm going to get a different look and feel down below there. So notice kind of right here, things are changing down there. So I want view name and family and type. So I'm looking at how do I want those two. I think I like everything that I've got going on right there. So I'm going to go ahead and say done and export. Again, I'll just override my one. All right, so what you're seeing now is you're seeing that the sheets right here, or not sheets, the views right here are not on a sheet. These right here are on a sheet. And what I want to do is I want the name of the sheet number to be part of my view name. So again, I'm going to do a little formula here. This is a real simple one. Equals, let's say, D6. And I want to go ahead and say dash on that. And then I want to add P6. All right, what did I miss? Oop, need an and there. There we go. So you can see that it added the number. And so what I'm gonna do is now just, again, like I said before, just drag her down. I'm gonna go right click and I'm gonna copy it. And then right here, just grab all of those, right click, and let's use the value option. No enters, Eugene. There you go. So I'm happy with that. All I need to do now is save it. And we're gonna load it in, but before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and just close this up, scroll up the list here. So these are all my floor plan views. Grab my view naming and import it. Again, it shows me what happened, what's changed. Do I have any messages? I'm looking good. We'll do an import. And then over here, it's gonna automatically update for me. Cool. All right. Next up. Doing some health checking. So think about all that stuff we talked about in the health check slides. Think about, how can we address those? And when we're looking at just plain Jane Revit, we do have the warning box that we can review and kind of do some things with. We can always look at our file size and keep an eye on that, and keep an eye on when we're syncing the central and opening files and closing files, how much time is that taking, and then really keep an eye on those CAD files and making sure that we're not exploding them if we have to have them in there. So there's really just the things that we can do in Revit. But when we look at other tools like maybe Ideate Explorer or Ideate BIMLink, there's a lot of things we can do to help the process of our health check. So I'm going to go and take a good gander at what's going on in these little areas here. So again, back to our Bim link. I'm going to go close this view here for a sake here. And again, I'm going to go and say new. And then of course we have a nice little one right there. And so looking at this, we've got health checks for dimensions, for grids, for imports, for keynotes, for levels, for model lines. There's a whole bunch of stuff there, and there's this nice one called Ideate that we'll get into. But if I had a link model, I'll do this one. If I had a link model in here, And I was interested in what's going on with the link model and making sure that we're having the same information as far as grids go and grid numbering systems. This is a great way to find out. I don't have a link model in here, but it would actually show me that link model because I have included my linked elements in here, and it would show me to make sure that I am actually seeing information. Now, it's not giving me what I need to see appropriately. So if I pop over here and I say, well, let's move that one up a little bit, now it's giving me the order that I can visually see what's going on as far as numbering system go. And I'm looking at this one right here, it's a 13.8, and that's concerning to me. So some of these numbering systems are somewhat concerning that I might want to go look at. Now, my favorite one, and Sash may argue, but my favorite one, it's all about dimensions. So when I go look at this one, and I look at what I have here in my dimensions, I need to have a couple dimensions here, and I don't care about the link model, so I'll remove that. But as I look down the list there, okay, the jam depth, okay, the verify and field, and the equal ones, okay. So think about what we're seeing. These are the value overrides. We can look at prefixes and suffixes, but what's concerning to me is there's that 0.4 foot dash 0 inches. That tells me right now that somebody overrid that. I can just look at that and know that somebody has done an override to that, and not even looking over here. But what's really concerning is this 6 foot dash 0 inches. That's not the real value. And so somebody went in there and did something to this. They basically did an override. So what I want to do is click on this, right click and say show element. And it doesn't have an open view up, so I'm going to say let's go to the view. Now let's move my box out of the way once it pops in, and you can see that it's talking about really that one right there, and there's the other one close to it. But again, I didn't export this out. I'm just looking and seeing what's going on. So it's something like the fire rating that we talked about earlier, right click and go look at that information, and you can still see it. And in this case, I want to dig a little deeper and say, well, okay, who created the dimension? And add that. And then who was the last person that updated the dimension? Okay, and I don't know who this Eugene person is, but I definitely need to take him out for a cup of coffee and talk about bad practices right here. And so looking at this, I can actually edit that right here. I can just backspace that one. I can go and say done, and I'll just close the box out, and you can see that automatically updated to 4 foot. Or 24 feet. So you can see that not only can we look at information, but we can actually change that information in the box if it's appropriate and know what's going on, or we can export it out to Excel and do it in Excel. All right, now, if I pop back in here, we've got another one here that I want to chat about that I kind of brushed over. And it was the Ideate one. So I'm going to go ahead and instance parameters. We'll go and say, okay, and let's look at this thing. So you can see that here's all the different parameters that it's coming in. Of course, we can get rid of the certain ones if we don't want it, like I'm not interested in the structural stuff, I can get rid of that information. And then if we look over here, you can see that, we're getting project information, categories, marks, types, and it's just a whole bunch of information. In fact, 4,336 elements is what we got in this list here. So a lot of information. Now, what I want to do is I want to bring these together in a single file and be able to work with that. So before I do that, I'm going to pop over here to my Explorer here and look at what's going on here. So where all of these links are located at are right in here. So if I go there and you look at it, it's program files, Ideate software, what version you're on. So 2022 for me. And then there's Bim Link, we're using the US, and then the sample files. And so you're going to see that right underneath here there's the Kobe links that were in that dialog box. We're going to look at project standards. There's the project standards links. And remember, we were at quality control. There's quality control. So all of those are there. And then, last but not least, our health check. And there's all links to that. But look at that bottom file, Ideate Health Check. So that's going to do some nice fancy things for us. So I don't want to mess with this one. So I'm going to pop on over to the one that I have as a sample file. I'm going to first open that up. And so this is a one that I've already exported out. It's kind of a sample, and you see what we're getting is a pivot table. All these colored ones right down here that I colored myself are pivot tables. So it's giving me a summary of information, summary of views, a summary of in-place families that I have. And then if I go to the farther end here, these are actually the QC things that we're getting. So it allows me to look at, let's see here, dimensions, and there's some dimension override information. So this is an export that I had that I can start digging into and looking at. Here's that Ideate one with that whole ton of information that we can start looking at. Now, what I have is a stripped down version of that right here. Get rid of that one. So on the other screen, sorry. So I have a stripped down version that I got that's really stripped and doesn't really have any content in it. So it's one that we're starting from scratch. So you can kind of see what's happening and what's going on. Now, also keep in mind that if a file exists or a tab exists, it's going to basically override that tab information. So that's kind of a cool thing too. So I'll get rid of this, I'll save it. And what I want to do is I'm going to take my dimensions, I'm going to export it over to that folder. And there it is. And that one there. And see what it's saying is it's going to override not the Excel spreadsheet, but the worksheet and that tab in the worksheet. So as long as the names are the same, it's going to do the override. So, okay. Oops, I didn't want to do that. And then that was dimensions. Let's go ahead and do the grids. And this is the last one here. And just to make sure I didn't mess anything up, I'll do the dimension one again. Oops. There we go. So just think about, what I've just done and taking the, basically taking these three little links and putting it over to an Excel spreadsheet that I can look at and dive into and do a whole bunch of stuff with. And think about, this was, 3 tabs, and maybe it's 5 to 10 tabs or 15 tabs, and you're going to do that, times 20 projects, and then you're going to repeat this weekly. That's something that you want to think about doing with the automation feature of the Bim Link tool. And that's something we won't talk about today. We'll have another session on that one. But you can see what I got going on right here now is on my summary, it's telling me all the objects that I have. So it's giving me the summary of what's happening there. If I pop over here to my dimensions and keynotes, you can see there's the override information right there. And if I hop over here to all the way over here to, come on, keep going, there it is, our Ideate one, there's that 4,336 fields there. Now I'm going to do, just to show you the change here, I'm going to get out of this. And I'll go ahead and just save it in this case. And I want to make that change here to this one. I'm going to go and get rid of that and say okay. And that should now change that dimension. Now if I go back, wrong button. There we go. And I go ahead and export this out again. We're going to override that one. And we'll open up that file. And I pop back over here to my dimensions. That one is gone. So that's what I was talking about. If that tab already exists, you can just override that existing tab and you're going to get the new information. Now, think about all of this information that's in Excel and what we can do. Just think about this data mining. And if you're a Power BI user, you can push this. You can push a lot of data information into this and use Power BI functionality to get, your health check tables, your graphics, your dashboard, just a whole bunch of stuff going on with this. So just a very, very powerful tool that we're seeing today. Right, and I did mention automation. So think about, the automation feature of the Bim Link functionality will save you time with repetitive tasks. Just think about all the things that you want to do in a health check or just daily content that you want to update and change. You want to think about this automation feature that we don't talk about today, but we'll get into it on another session. So I'm running out of time here, so real quickly, I want you to, a couple little tidbits going on right here. Ideate's been around for quite some time as far as developer goes. Looking at Bim Link's been around 10 plus years, so a very proven piece of software. I'll get into that ROI tab in a minute there. And looking at what software that's supported, all the way down to 2019 for you. And then, you definitely want to look at some of the help features of that. Some other resources for you. I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago on Ideate Explore, and how to find that webcast is just go to our Imagine It tab. You want to click on the resource option, and then in the middle there's browse by type. You want to collab on videos, and then here's the video of my top 10 auditing tips and tricks with Ideate Explore, and then a couple other ones like what's new in the AEC collections. If you're an AutoCAD user still, there's what's new in the AutoCAD flavor as well. So before I pop in, I want to get back over here to, let's say, here, and let's add a tab here, and let's go to Ideate software. So for the ROI, it's really simple. You're going to pop on solutions. It's right there. Click on that, and it's going to give you a nice reading material session. And Richard and those folks did some great job on the ROIs for all of this information. So take some time, look at it, peruse it, and there's help. So if you want support, you can get help for help files. You can get videos for all of the Ideate software, if you will. And with that, if you have any questions looking at pricing, you want to ping your account manager, you can always ping me, and you can always ping Glynis there. So with that,